Just a few days ago, we shared a hunt where I tagged a nice 9-pointer we called Ranger. If you haven't seen that hunt,
oh my word, yes!
Make sure you check out the link in the description and watch that full hunt unfold. Because in this video, we're going to be breaking down all the lessons from the Ranger hunt. Let's talk about deer biology during the early season. We've shared several videos recently explaining how deer are on those food cover patterns, usually right as most states are opening their hunting season. Throughout much of the summer, deer are focused on those high protein diets. But coming into fall, deer are getting ready for the winter and the upcoming rut, and especially bucks. They're needing to put on a lot of calories, and they're going to shift to those carb-based diets, looking forward to winter. During the early season, if you can find those current food sources, you're probably going to see a lot of activity. So let's talk about old Ranger. What's going on in Ranger's world as we go through the summer and into the hunt season? During the late summer, Ranger showed up on the Moultrie Mobile. He was a big old 9-pointer and he got our attention. We started tracking Ranger in the Moultrie Mobile app and diving in deeper into understanding Ranger's movements. This summer at the Proving Grounds 2, we experienced some extreme drought conditions. And what was interesting was we saw Ranger was active around a couple of large food plots that were planted in green cover seeds summer forage. That high protein diet that he was seeking during the summer, well, he was going into those food plots to feed. As the drought conditions continued through the summer, many of the palatable species were starting to harden off, and that was true in food plots and in native vegetation. On top of that, water was becoming a limited resource, and we had a Moultrie Mobile positioned over a small pond on the top of a big ridge. And sure enough, old Ranger was coming in to get a drink. So what were the limited resources during the late summer? It was water and food. We were covering water, but we also had a small hidey-hole food plot that had a great stand of Milo in that green cover seed summer blend. And that was the limited resource. And sure enough, old Ranger was coming down even into this small hidey-hole food plot that was only about 30 yards wide. He was coming in and hammering the Milo heads. This is one reason why planting hidey holes with a summer blend can be so important and effective for hunters. If you're hunting big timber like we are here at the Proving Grounds 2, especially during the late summer when food sources can come skinny, well, if you've got some Milo, man, that's a great attraction for deer to come in. And that's conditioning deer to coming into that hidey hole to feed, getting deer used to that area so they're not going over to the neighbors trying to find food somewhere else. Watching the Moultrie Mobiles, it wasn't long before deer had those Milo heads stripped, because that was the limited resource. So we knew Ranger was active on this ridge, and especially around this little hidey hole where he was finding a food source. But as we slide into hunting season, September 15th, Missouri's archery season opens. Watch out, folks. If you're hunting big timber country like we are here, it's an acorn game many years. And that's why we've been out with our burst binoculars and we're scouting, because we're seeing a lot of acorns here at the Proving Grounds 2. So every day into season, there's going to be more and more acorns dropping. And that's more food everywhere. So if you can find those limited resources early on, you've got a chance at finding a buck. Now let's take this one step further. Early on, right as season's starting, there's not a lot of hunting pressure. But further into season, we get into October, November, deer are starting to feel that pressure. And a lot of times folks say, why are my deer nocturnal? Well, they're feeling that pressure. And that's why hunting during the early season, deer usually seem much calmer. They feel very comfortable moving because they haven't been disturbed throughout the summer. This is one reason we really enjoy hunting the early season. In fact, we've got a big mature buck we call Lucky, who is daylight, and he is active right now. We've got a pile of Moultrie Mobile images and videos of Lucky on his feet during daylight. And the reason is he's using a portion of the proving grounds too that's very undisturbed. Applying this same strategy, my first hunt of 2024 was sitting in a redneck, and I had an encounter with a 5-year-old buck we call Thomas. I think we might have watched Thomas for 30 or 40 minutes, and the whole time he felt very comfortable, plenty of shooting light. Unfortunately, Thomas stayed about 60 yards from the redneck, and I'm not taking a 60-yard shot on the whitetail, so I just let him feed, waiting for another day. The next few days here at the proving grounds were fairly warm, and we saw a lot of morning movement on the Moultrie Mobile. In fact, Old Ranger was at that same hidey-hole food plot feeding in the morning. You may say, well, he's there in the morning during daylight. Why don't you move in and hunt him? We recently shared a video of why sometimes we don't like to hunt in the mornings, especially during the early season. You got to remember, deer are different than most humans. They're working or living during that night period, and then as they're moving back in the mornings, that's their supper. As they're feeding back to bed, a lot of times that hunter's going to come in and may bump that deer while they're active. Old Ranger was grabbing his supper as he was heading back to bed for the day. A lot of times during the early season, hunting in the afternoons is more favorable for the hunter because, again, that deer has been bedded all day, sleeping during the day, and then they're going to get up and eat their breakfast. And that's when us as hunters can slide into our hunting locations while the deer's bedded, and then catch them on their feet grabbing breakfast before they go work during the night shift. Once you understand this, you can begin designing your hunting strategy based on this information. And not only your hunting strategy, but your habitat. If you can position food, especially a little hidey-hole food plot, right next to high quality cover, where that buck does not have to move very far to get up out of his bed and come and feed for his breakfast, you probably do the same thing. You probably go out to eat during dinner more than you go out to eat for breakfast. Well, think of it like that for deer. They don't want to move very far. If you can tuck that food source right next to high quality cover, you're probably going to see more bucks getting on their feet and moving earlier during shooting light during the afternoon. This is exactly the design we had at this little hidey-hole food plot where Ranger was active. And we saw Ranger doing exactly this. On the slope just over the hill from this little hidey hole, we had felled eastern red cedar, get more sunlight to the ground, making cover. And on top of that, we've got an additional food source. Acorns started dropping. There were a few trees in that area that were dropping acorns. If you look at it from Ranger's perspective, stop thinking like a human, think like a deer. He's got everything he needs right there. He doesn't have to travel very far. In fact, if you look at where Old Ranger was during the summer, during the drought conditions, he was over a half mile to the north. But when those limited resources were right there together, that cover and that food during that specific time of the year, our Moultrie Mobiles weren't picking him up in many other areas. He was likely holding very tight because he had everything he needed. Knowing Ranger was in this area and on a really good pattern of food and cover, we had to wait for the right conditions to hunt. Thankfully, a cool front moved in, which is rare during the early season, and we had a northwest wind during the afternoon of September 24th. We were able to approach the location in the tracker. And I like trackers because they're fairly quiet compared to other units on the market. And we slid in right along the eastern side of where we believed Ranger was bedded, blowing our scent away from Ranger. And we got to the stand fairly early, but it was cool enough and there was actually some rain moving through that we suspected deer would be up moving a bit sooner. And I mention this because, shame on me, a little behind the scenes, I had forgotten my bow when we had first headed out to the stand. We had to turn back and I had to grab my bow, which put us, what I thought, we were going to be late to the stand, and we almost were. But we got there and we start setting up. I look over and Jack is setting up the GoPro cameras. Jack's our intern. This is only his second time filming a hunt. And I look over my shoulder and I see a deer coming up the gas line easement.
I'll make this quick because we've got a deer about 70 yards over my shoulder here.
And I mention all that because we've actually done an episode about this, and I would encourage you to go check it out. It's called Hunt Like a Bobcat. And the idea is bobcats are constantly moving and they're almost intersecting their game. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But I gotta say, this was part of all this hunt coming together, was the fact that we got to the stand almost at the exact same time Ranger was starting to move, coming out of his bed. If we'd been there for 2 or 3 hours, I'm sure, especially in these Ozark Mountains, the wind would have swirled some and create almost this scent cone around us. But the fact that we got there almost the exact same time that he was moving, we were essentially hunting like a bobcat, getting to our quarry's path almost the exact time that our prey was coming through. When we talk about a hunting strategy, this is part of it. How do you enter, hunt, and exit without alerting deer? If you cannot burn out stand locations and alert deer, well, it goes back to deer are going to feel more comfortable moving during daylight hours. And sure enough, just the way this played out, Ranger came within range within about 10 minutes of us setting foot in the stand.
Yes.
Hunters, myself included, enjoy being in the woods. We get a great thrill out of just being out in creation. And sometimes we just like going out and sitting for several hours and watching squirrels and deer and turkey. We enjoy that, and there's nothing wrong about that. But if you're wanting to continually see deer, not burn out hunting locations, see deer during shooting light, not see all your bucks on camera during nighttime, it is really important to understand and plan an effective hunting strategy based on, can you enter, hunt, and exit without alerting deer? If you can do that, you can hunt the same stand over and over and over. So understanding that and applying it to your hunting strategy, that can be one of the most important things that hunters can do to see more bucks and punch more tags.
What a deer. Holy cow.
It was a quick, thrilling hunt for me. But old Ranger wasn't done providing lessons. You know, I learned a lot during Ranger's hunt, but he wasn't done. We got him all skinned out, removed the venison, processed it, have great taste in meat to share with our friends and family. But the last lesson Ranger provided was when I disposed of the carcass. I opened up his rumen, it was chock full of acorns. And that told me the preferred food source right now is acorns. I've already punched a tag, but that's great information for Grant. He's still got a tag in his pocket, boys, and you can bet he's going to be using that information to plan his next hunt. He's probably going to be sitting close to an oak tree that's dropping acorns. Make sure when you harvest a deer, open up that rumen, whether it's a buck or a doe. Open that up, look and see what that current food source is. There's no better MRI, most recent information, than getting your hands dirty and looking inside a deer, finding out exactly the food source they're going to every single day. That'll help you tag more deer, and if you want, you can share it with your buddies, and maybe they'll share some backstraps with you. That's what hunting's all about learning more about creation, sharing time with friends and families outdoors. But no matter what, whether you're hunting, scouting, maybe you've punched a tag and you're enjoying a venison steak, make sure you slow down this week, enjoy creation, but no matter what, listen to the Creator and the purpose He has for your life. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.